Hello, and welcome to the most must-see detective show. Detective Catch here, your very own private investigator. Now let me paint you a picture of a world different from the one you know. A world where the government is not what it seems, where powerful secret societies pull the strings from behind the scenes, and where things worse than you can imagine are still at play. A world where the truth is hidden in plain sight, and only those with the courage to seek it out will ever truly understand the forces that shape our reality. As I delve deeper into this twisted world of horror, I uncover shocking truths that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. But be warned, as you delve deeper into this sinister world, you may find that the truth is more horrifying than you could have ever imagined. Americans, rich and poor, conservative and liberal, religious and secular, are enthralled by the promise of personal fulfillment that this amalgam of therapeutic self-help, financial counseling, and spiritual enlightenment offers. However, when enlightenment is used to advance oneself, interpersonal relationships suffer. We are denied the vocabulary of community and solidarity because we are surrounded by the language of personal well-being. In The Money Cult, Capitalism, Christianity, and the Unmaking of the American Dream, Chris Lehman addresses this uniquely American tendency. He examines the uniquely American fusion of capitalism and evangelical Christianity, dubbed the Money Cult, and contends that American Protestant Christianity has not only adapted to, but sanctified market mandates. Rather than being criticized, wealth, power, and the pursuit of profit became the stuff of divinity. The characteristics required in the marketplace frugality, faith in the power of self-realization, and complete individualism were transformed into tools of salvation in Christian churches. The money cult's core dogmas are what feed many of America's popular superstitions about economic life. He says today, from the belief that individual merit is the strict and undeviating guarantee of individual wealth, to the myth that Wall Street investment bankers are Promethean job creators, to the mystical faith that digital commerce will upend all traditional limitations on human enterprise, and indeed, human existence. Lehman's research traces the twists and turns that led to the formation of this American marriage of religion and economics. Lehman portrays the Puritans, the first Americans to combine religious injunction with economic concerns, as communitarians whose policies were dictated by the New Testament ethic of caring for all in the community, rather than the coldly rational caricatures with which we are all too familiar. Wealth might demonstrate God's favor in the Puritans' world, but that didn't mean the poor could be ignored. In fact, famed Puritan John Winthrop insisted that the care of the public must oversway all private respects. How did American life progress from this communitarian approach to the radically individualist money cult of the 20th century, asks Lehman. To explain this transformation, the text delves into more than 300 years of American religious history. The emphasis on the individual's experience of worship in relationship with God was perhaps the most important factor in the development of the money cult. Open revivals, rather than traditional institutional services, became the most popular forms of worship during the First and Second Great Awakenings. These gatherings featured dramatic outward manifestations of divine encounters, such as spontaneous dancing, fainting, and speaking in tongues, to name a few. Individualist understandings of salvation in relationship to God were encouraged by revivals, and the preachers who led them. One's spiritual experiences were unrelated to those of one's neighbors. The emotionality of these events became the criterion by which a person could judge his or her closeness to God, and this judgment resided almost entirely within the solitary believer's emotional experience of conversion. Meanwhile, revivalists were forging links between the religious and economic spheres of American life. Disgusted by the timidity of Presbyterian prayers, with their puritanical assumption of humanity's total and collective depravity, preachers such as Charles Finney encouraged trust in God's abundant capacity to bring their wishes to fulfillment. Worshippers gradually came to believe that, with the right attitude, one's prayers to God would result in both material and spiritual well-being. Individuals were coming into a powerful certainty that they had discovered a new model of salvation, keyed to their eager pursuit of prosperity and well-being in the New World, Lehman explains. Revivals focused their efforts on the worldly, spiritual, and material manifestations of God's blessings, and they began to preach market-approved conduct, such as workplace discipline, as part of God's divine plan to bring about salvation and wealth on earth. According to Lehman, this resulted in quintessentially American religions such as Mormonism, Christian Science, and numerous small sects and offshoot churches that cleaved to an elite model of respectable virtue. that clearly favored the spiritual outlook and character traits already earmarked for worldly success. Although these attitudes began among ordinary believers, they became institutionalized in the mid-19th century, when members of the increasingly wealthy American elite invited them into their corporate cultures. John Wanamaker urged his employees and customers to infuse their work lives with spiritual purpose, to pray more fervently and deeply feel the sanctification that their individual material success could bring. Channing, Finney, Wanamaker, and others depicted the individual's progress towards success in self-culture as a kind of mystic revelation of self-generating qualities already inherent in the secret recesses of one's soul. These can be discovered and unleashed by having the right attitude towards God. Exhortations to awaken the giant within are common in success and self-help literature today. This genre exploded in popularity during the Gilded Age and continues to be popular today. We now reflexively accept the publishing market's own packaging of business advice books and inspirational works about self-help as essentially the same genre, Lehman insists. The money cult retreated somewhat during the less prosperous era of the World Wars, but emerged as the prosperity gospel of thinkers like Mormon Vincent Peale during the post-war era. Lehman explains that as the 1950s prosperity began to wane, American Protestants embarked on a mission to radically reconfigure the self, so that divine deliverance and market prosperity were indistinguishable. In the face of stagnant wages, joblessness, and an uncertain economy, proponents of the new gospel of wealth urged Americans to envision your best life now and become in tune with the infinite. People's lives would improve if they simply changed their attitude, thought more positively, and worked harder. This message was aimed specifically at workers. By this point, business elites had fully embraced and harnessed the prosperity gospel in the workplace. Companies like General Motors actively promoted it to discourage union activity, the ultimate form of negative worker thinking. Indeed, Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking, which is still a Christian self-help favorite today, was commissioned by a group attempting to suppress union activity in California and Hawaii. According to Lehman, workers responded with a renewed determination to master the elements of a successful life that they felt were still most firmly under their control, namely, their own psychic dispositions, after being told repeatedly that any dissatisfaction with their lives was the result of a negative attitude. Workers would not demand institutional change if they were immune to the concept of collective well-being. Today's prosperity gospel of Joel Osteen, who remains the nation's most popular, beloved, and successful pulpit orator, is the apotheosis of the money cult. According to Lehman, why should we limit God? In his sermons and literature, Osteen asks, according to Osteen, if one believes enough, faithfulness to God will result not only in eternal salvation, but also in the earthly salvation of unlimited wealth. Being a good Christian and a good capitalist are identical in Osteen's cosmology. If one works and believes hard enough, God will deploy the mechanisms of consumer capitalism to engineer their just battery of worldly, yet supernaturally delivered, rewards. Limiting one's worldly ambitions is equivalent to doubting God's ability and willingness to provide. The Puritan communitarian ethos of the 17th century is turned on its head here. The social ethic of the New Testament, under which the poor were the true heirs to the planet, and early Christians held all property and common rights, Lehman, has morphed into the prosperity gospel, which deems worldly success a direct sign of divine favor and translates Jesus' ministry into a battery of business stratagems and motivational slogans. To find salvation in today's money cult, one must only look upward, which really only means inward, rather than around at the treatment of one's neighbors. The money cult is refreshing in that it demands that we respect American Christians and their ideas. Too often, secular elites make doomsday preaching, and speaking preachers and worshippers the punchline of their jokes. The preachers become clever con artists, and the congregation simply a group of credulous simpletons or lunatic fanatics. Deriding high-profile preachers as nothing more than hucksters who prey on popular fears and superstitions may satisfy the very broad dictates of left-leaning secular cultural superiority, but it tells us almost nothing about what followers of the new gospels of wealth actually think and believe, let alone how the money cult's distinctive gospel influences the culture at large. Lehman argues, if we treat these trends as an aberration of otherwise sober secularism, rather than a symptom of a larger trend. We miss out on learning about the culture we live in and how it produces social and economic nostrums that we often take for granted. Lehman is more correct than he realizes. According to the money cult, conservative evangelicals, megapastors, and their Sunbelt flocks are today's iteration of this fusion of capitalism and American spirituality. However, quasi-religious success literature is not limited to these preachers and their followers. Upper-class liberals who enjoy mocking evangelicals have their own Austines, proponents of mindfulness, New Age spirituality, and Americanized Eastern religion. They, like money cult preachers, encourage a spiritual reorientation to discover one's true nature or strengths, which can then be harnessed for success in all personal, career, and financial matters. No structural or communal change required. These schools of thought have, wittingly or unwittingly, sanctified profit seeking as a path to living well, defined to be compatible with an elite capitalist culture. They too are heirs of the money cult, albeit more palatable to a secular and educated audience. Consider Oprah Winfrey and her feel-good media empire. Oprah, with her enormous cultural influence, has promoted a variety of New Age self-help methods. Her endorsement of Rhonda Byrne's The Secret, which promotes the law of attraction, in which thinking positive thoughts creates positive vibrations, which elicit the universe's assistance in inviting health and wealth into one's life, for example, popularized the law of attraction for a massive audience. Deepak Chopra, another Oprah favorite, encourages us to become in tune with the subtle yet powerful, unseen forces that affect the flow of money in our lives. Her "You Can Change Your Life" mantras are especially appealing to the most privileged Americans, but cruel to everyone else. According to Leon Wiesletier, there is no such thing as failure, Oprah told Harvard's graduating class, only life attempting to move us in a different direction. Wiesletier states the obvious: our country is awash in failure, but the wealthy, not the poor, may be immune to it. Austin might wonder why they don't believe in God's productivity. Oprah and Chopra might wonder if they're not vibrating loudly enough. Although Arianna Huffington and other members of the tech world are less openly associated with therapeutic pseudo-spirituality, her support for mindfulness techniques suggests otherwise. Evgeny Morozov of the New Republic reports on Huffington's projects to use technology to promote spiritual well-being. She proposes a GPS for the soul and a digital Sabbath to turn off distractions for a time to live in the present moment, using intentionally religious language. The pace of life has sped up, she laments. The vast majority of people are exhausted, distracted, and unsatisfied. What is the answer? Change your habits to change your attitude and forget about everything else. What is good for us as individuals is also good for corporate America's bottom line, Huffington wrote, and as a result, we must put what at first may appear to be abstract or esoteric concepts, mindfulness and meditation, to very productive use in the workplace. The goal of adopting mindful practices, it appears, is to return to work more productive than we would have been otherwise, confident that we've done everything we can to improve our lives. Cultural icons on both the right and the left, in the religious and, ostensibly, secular realms, offer startlingly similar advice. Unleash your inner potential. Live your best life, attract positive vibrations, or even put your faith in God, are all advice given to us to help us overcome our joblessness and loneliness, failing health, or dwindling bank accounts. The burden of success and the blame for failure falls squarely on the individual for failing to think or believe clearly enough. We carry this individualism from the church to the marketplace, as Lehman demonstrates, to produce a solitary, unencumbered vision of salvation, selfhood, and social order. We're all alone here. This spiritual solipsism begs us to disregard our common problems. The lineage that Lehman lays out connects conservative and liberal, uneducated and overeducated people, and their ideologies have far more in common than we realize. Our obsession with perfecting our own dispositions impairs our ability to think or act collectively for our own or each other's good. Religious and spiritual thinking becomes an ally rather than a critic of capital and power. Our progressive media moguls, who benevolently provide escape, either intentionally or unintentionally distract us from the issues and solutions that might unite us. According to Lehman, American religiosity prioritizes every man and his own divinity over the common good, and if, as the money cult contends, Americans abandon community to worship individual wealth, we are a miserly culture. And that concludes today's episode. But like always, remember that we must unite as a community while the world around us continues to twist and corrupt. In the face of uncertainty, We must stand together in support of one another. You are helping our channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing this video, as well as promoting awareness and community cohesion. Only together can we overcome the darkness and meet any obstacle that arises. As a result, I kindly request that you take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with your loved ones. Let's unite and grow stronger collectively. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay vigilant.